All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We got a large crowd today, so as people are joining here, we still have folks joining. We're just going to go ahead and get started here, and they can kind of jump in when they come in here. So thank you for joining us today. This is obviously the first presentation that we're doing for the year here. This presentation we do on a monthly basis. It is updated frequently. This actually has been completely redone. So this is a brand new presentation for the year based on new tactics and new things that are happening out there to bring everybody up to speed. There's a little bit of common stuff that we talked about, maybe if you attended one of these before, but a lot of new material in this. So hopefully it's enlightening for everybody. My name's Brian. I'm the CTO here at PCA Technology Group. Also an ethical hacker. All that means is a lot of the stuff I'm talking about, I know how to do. I have a bunch of letters behind my name and don't bother publicizing it, but just basically means that I know kind of what's going on when it comes to cybersecurity, and I like to share that knowledge with individuals to try to help protect them from the bad guys. So what are we going to talk about today? Big topics, a couple of topics that we're really going to touch base on. What is cybersecurity, why it's important, some of the common tactics that are attacks that is used out there. We'll specifically talk a little bit more about USB, mobile, and IoT devices. We'll touch a little bit on shadow IT, if you've ever heard of that. If not, we'll explain what that is. And then also the big one is obviously passwords and multi-factor. So why are we worried about cybersecurity? Well, there's a couple of major reasons. The first and foremost is you're protecting your organization's employees, their health, their well-being. That's first and foremost when it comes to cybersecurity. That is priority number one for a business is to protect the welfare of their employees. Secondary, obviously, is client-facing things. So that's data. And well-being of them too. So the whole point is you're trying to protect your people and also your clients. AI, anybody that's been in the know or turned on the news or listened to things, AI is everywhere. We're going to spend a little bit of time explaining about some of the positives and negatives to AI. AI has its uses, but unfortunately for all the good stuff that it has and available, the bad is also on the opposite side of that coin. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and what that means. Also for insurance, obviously, if you have cyber insurance coverage, cybersecurity presentations and awareness are a part of that. Requirements, and at this point, it's no longer, you can't just say you're doing it. You have to actually prove you're doing it. Or if there is a claim, they may not pay out. So that's the other thing to worry about. And then compliance too. If you're a company or an entity, organization that has any type of compliance regulations, then cybersecurity is also a piece of that too. So who's responsible for cybersecurity? Well, at the very forefront, it starts from the top of the org chart down, whether that's a CEO or whether you have a board. It really, the buck stops with them. They are ultimately the one who owns it and should be living and breathing it throughout the company through example. It's as point blank as that. If you have top level people that aren't following the policies that you have in place, it's not fair or even reasonable to expect your employees or the people underneath you as you go down through the org chart to be following that stuff. So really it starts at the top. Management, if you are in a mid-tier or executive level, your responsibility is basically making sure that your direct reports know about what they should be doing and are compliant with that. That doesn't mean they need to know every single word for the policy, but they need to know the gist of it. And then also management should be actively participating in the development and improvement of any type of cybersecurity policies that are in place, because they're the ones that interact with the workers. They're also the ones that are more likely than not, any policies that are in place affect management and workers more so than it does, board members and stuff, because a lot of times they may not actually be in the business, they're working on the business. So and then at the bottom there, obviously everybody else that's outside of those realms. It could be team leads, workers, employees. Pretty much everybody is responsible for cybersecurity, and it's very important that regardless if you fall in those top two tiers, it's also very important that there's feedback and things from everybody else outside those top two, those first three bullet points there, because again, the policies really affect everyone. And if you're finding it difficult to do your job because of a security policy in place or something, you should bring that up to somebody and it should be evaluated. It could be that, the policy's too strict and you're going to try to find ways to subvert the protection that's there, or something of that nature. So input is valid, and there might be a reason why they're that strict, but it could be the wrong policy too. Just because someone thinks it's a good policy at the upper layers and they thought that they would, see how this works, if it comes down to it's affecting your job, your performance, your metrics and things like that, it might not be the right policy. You might have to change that policy or tweak that policy a little bit. This isn't a one size fits all thing. So pretty much everybody in the room is on this call is responsible ultimately, because what we like to call it is the human firewall. So you can have all kinds of layers of technology and security in place. They're only as good as someone not letting a bad guy in the door. So that's realistically what it is. And they also, the bad guys realize that it's easier to break a company by going after its people than its technology, because a lot of times people will let those bad guys in inadvertently. And we'll talk about what that looks like. So what is that human firewall piece? Well, it's basically broken by what's called social engineering. So it's manipulating people's trust, people's tendency to do things, their habits, and you're basically manipulating that to try to get them to do something that you want to do, whether it's clicking on a link, whether it's holding a door open physically, whether it's, I don't know, visiting a website, or changing direct deposit information. It's really what it is, and we'll talk about specific examples of what this looks like. So the most common attacks are email. They consist of phishing, spear phishing, and BEC, which stands for business email compromise. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about each one of those. Some of the trends, ransomware is a big thing. I'm sure everybody here has heard of ransomware. If you haven't heard of ransomware, basically it's the bad actors. Once they have access to your internal network, they tend to encrypt your data throughout the network. And basically what that does is it basically makes it unusable to you. And then they say, well, you're going to pay me X amount of crypto coin, and you're hoping they give you the key to unlock that data so you can then use it again. But it ends up being extremely expensive. And you're also relying on the fact that they're going to honor what they're saying they're honor, by giving you that key, and that key actually does unlock the data. So that's one thing. Extortion is basically stealing the data and threatening to release that on the dark web or maybe to a competitor, depending on what kind of business you are. Sometimes they do both. Sometimes they do ransomware and extort, try to get you on both sides. Obviously you want to try to avoid those situations as best you can. Automation, with AI, again, we'll touch more on this, but AI is not only leveraged for good things, but the bad guys also are leveraging it to automate attacks. Also to craft phishing emails. So no longer you're going to see the misspelled, mistyped, words, or get your inheritance from a Nigerian king or something that wants to share his money with you. These are very, very well crafted emails. And there's also impersonation going on with AI too. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But, AI has really upped the game when it comes to security. So you definitely have to be aware of what's happening out there. Social media. So social media can be leveraged for reconnaissance. It can also be leveraged as a potential attack vector. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Who's behind it? More likely than not, it's criminal groups, hacktivists, nation states, or potentially insider threats too. That's something that you have to be aware of now too, whether it's intentional or or not intentional. That there is always a risk with insider threats as well too. So, and then the attack vectors. Most of the time, it's done in the cloud or internet, mobile. Sometimes it happens on mobile devices. And then, you always have the potential of physical on site too, where they're in your area or whatever, and they're physically trying to breach your facility. So let's kick this off with web browsing. So some tips here basically. So keep your web browsing, if you do any web browsing while you're at work, to business use only. That will limit your exposure to potentially unknown sites or malicious sites. So you don't want to be doing your shopping during Christmas time or holidays and things like that while you're at work. Wait till you get home to do that kind of thing. Keep your web browsing specifically to business use. That definitely limits your exposures to those type of things. Social media, unless you're using it as a marketing ploy, I also suggest staying off of that. You can stumble upon things, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. There's a lot of things that you potentially could stumble upon that may look harmless, but they're not. And if you don't need to be on those type of sites, or you have a specific department, you can limit the exposures there as well too. So keep your browsers updated. Almost every day of the week, or every other day, there's always something being exposed, either in Firefox or Chrome or Edge. All the browsers that are out there, there's some type of issue that needs to be updated. So if you're getting prompted to update your browser, if you see that, it usually pops notifications and things like that in the upper corner of your browser. We'll also cover a tactic that the bad guys are doing to leverage that. But if you think there's you can always double check your browser too by going File, About, and then it'll say check for updates there. So you can check it that way too. But usually it'll pop a little box in the upper corner of your browser window that says, like at the title bar, it says there's like an update wait pending or something like that. But I'll show you the tactic that the bad guys are using too to leverage this exact thing. And then pop-up windows. Pop-up windows, you want to be careful of those too. A lot of times there could be malicious intent behind those because they know a lot of people click on them to close them. Or I could definitely fire off a bunch of pop-up windows on your screen and make you panic, and you'll just start clicking everywhere, and you could eventually inadvertently click on something that will download something on your machine without you even realizing it. Now, most of the browsers do have pop-up blockers built into them, so a lot of times this doesn't become too much of an issue. But in the event that you find yourself in a situation where you're questioning the pop-up, you can hit Control W or Alt F4 on your keyboard. That works across all platforms. And that will either get rid of the window. If you do the Control W, that will get rid of the window with focus. More likely than not, it's that pop-up window. If that doesn't work, the Alt F4 will actually close the whole browser down. So you'll be able to avoid potentially clicking on any of those areas if you're feeling questionable about it. So the bad guys also realize, and this kind of ties not only just web browsing, but it also ties passwords together. So they realize that a lot of folks don't like having separate logins or remembering separate passwords for each and every site that they visit. So there is a technology out there, or the capability. It's called SSO, or single sign-on, that allows some sites, if they're linked into this federation or group of entities that have come together to make sure they trust each other, that it allows you to leverage a sign in or log in for a different site that you already have onto a site that's part of that federation. So what I'm talking about is, like, maybe it might leverage your Gmail account, or your Google account, your Facebook account, your Apple account. Some other ones are Discord, Steam, things like that, where it actually will leverage that existing login and use that as the authentication method for a completely different site. And it kind of looks like the sign in page here on the screen, that it shows, hey, you want to log into Canva with, in this case, I think it's using Google, because that's the one missing from the link here. But you're leveraging your Google account to sign into Canva site. The bad guys realize that people are doing this, so they set up malicious versions of these. And the problem with it is it's extremely difficult to visually detect. And it's very, very easy to fall for. So you got to be careful if you are leveraging any other login for a particular site. And I'll show you an example of what this looks like here. So let's say you're going to Facebook, and you want to leverage an existing login for another one of your accounts somewhere else for Facebook. And basically, this is logging in. This is logging in with a phishing version. So this is a malicious version of that particular login, and this is the real version. If you look, pound for pound visually, this looks exactly like that visually. Even if you go up and click the little padlocks that will show Facebook on the fake one, it'll show Facebook on the real one. The URL is exactly the same as the real one as well, too. So visually, there's absolutely no way for you to tell the difference between the fake one and the real one. And this is just another example using Google as the login. So you're leveraging your Google account to log into whatever site it might be. Again, this page is exactly the same as this page, except there is a create account here. That one really raised many red flags to me, unless you're looking at them side by side. But again, the padlock is going to show Google. It's going to show the same thing as on the real site, and the URL is exactly the same as this as well, too. And it is pointing to the real site. So the way the bad guys paint this fake version of it, and I basically call that they're manipulating behind the scenes with code. That's why all the security stuff that most people would normally look for is still valid, because they're actually utilizing the real site, but they're using some coding techniques that if you do happen to put your login and information into the fake version, what's going to happen, it's going to authenticate you like you are using the real one. However, it's also sending that information. So you're basically going to send your username and your password to the bad guys that set up this malicious version. So how can you tell if you are on the fake one or the real one? It's actually kind of simple. If you are using this technology, or you decide to try to use this technology, or ask you to use this technology, personally, what I would do is, if you go back, I would actually use a separate login and email. That's me. That's what I do for everything. I don't leverage my any existing account for any site anywhere. They're all separate. That's just me. But in the case you do want to leverage this, which you can do, this screen was actually, these boxes, while they're put together now, would actually pop up in the middle of your screen of whatever site you're trying to log into. What you can do is you can actually grab the top of that screen, the bar on that screen that popped up, whether it's Google or whether it's Facebook, you grab that, and this is actually contained inside of a browser window. So what I want you to do is grab that and try to drag it outside of your browser screen. If it allows you to break the borders of that browser screen, that is the real site. If it locks you where you can't drag it outside of your internet browser, I would be very cautious using that, because it could potentially be a fake one. More likely than not, the real ones will break those screens, and it'll basically like drag off of the browser, and it'll kind of open up on your desktop. It'll display on your desktop then, where the fake one won't let you. It'll be contained to the browser window itself. It won't let you drag it outside of that. And that's because of how the bad guys are using the code to paint that. It doesn't allow it to break those borders. So that's one way of being able to tell and avoid these potential attacks if you are using that technology. And then, as I mentioned, the bad guys also realize that, hey, people are out there telling everybody to update your browser, update your browser, update your browsers. Well, they decided that, hey, we're going to leverage that because people might fall for it. So you end up going to a website or whatever, and you might get a screen pop up saying, oh, well, hey, to visit this website, you have to update your browser. If you ever get any type of indicator that when you're browsing a website and that pops up, The idea is that they're trying to get you to download something by clicking on, oh, well, update now. Okay, yeah, great. You know, they're giving you links for all these different versions of browsers. They want you to do that, and it's either, you know, it's some type of malicious program that is going to be installed on your computer. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to trick you into this. So if you do ever end up on a website that prompts you with a page similar to this, or even pops a message up saying, hey, you need to update your browser before you can view this content. Again, like I want you to do, not click on those links. I want you to go to maybe the file about browser thing, and open that up. And when you do that, there should be, you know, an update, or check for updates now. Check it there in your own browser, and don't rely on some page telling you that. So that's something to be aware of. Now, don't confuse this with the, you know, the message I said in the upper browser of itself that might be prompting you to do the update, because that's the browser itself, not an actual website telling you to do that. So I know it might be a little confusing, but that's what the bad guys want to do, is to confuse you. So a lot of people fall for this tactic and end up installing some kind of backdoors or password stealers or something of that nature. So that leads us on to email. So email is probably responsible for about 95% of the social engineering attacks. And again, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about this. But much like the browsing, don't mix your business email with personal items. Keep those two separate. And I know a lot of people that mix, you know, use their business email for everything because they don't want to check two different email boxes. Well, guess what? You are 90% more likely to fall for common tactics that the bad guys leverage, because you are using your business email for personal. You need to keep them separated. Don't sign up for your coupon, you know, your coupon shopper codes or whatever. Don't do shopping off of that. You know, personal shopping off of that. Don't sign up for book clubs or things like that. Keep that all in your personal email, because the bad guys will send you invoices, they'll send you shipping notices, they'll send you payment notices, all kinds of things like that. And if you're not doing that in your business email, you don't even have to question whether it's valid or not. You can just, you see that, oh, hey, I got an Amazon shopping notice. I don't buy anything with my business account. Delete. I don't even have to open it. You know, you can just see Amazon shopping. Okay, buy, click, gone. You don't even have to worry about it. Don't even question it. However, if you are doing that with your business email, you could fall for those. So just be aware of that. Now, if you do shopping, you know, maybe you're a purchasing person, and maybe you leverage, you know, Amazon Business or something, and you buy supplies from there, that you're going to have to be a little bit more careful for that, but just keep track of what you did order, what you didn't order, what is still pending, outstanding. But really, if you don't mix your business with personal, this will stop a lot of the phishing attacks for sure. So just from the sheer number of invoice scams and things like that. The other big thing, if you get emails that have embedded links in them, unless it is something that you were expecting, never, ever, ever follow any links that are inside of emails, unless it's something you're expecting. And what I mean by that is, you know, let's say you go to, you're legitimately on a website that you know is the right site. You want to change your password. Sometimes it says, hey, you know, we noticed you changed your password. Was this you? And there'll be an embedded link in there. If that's something you just did, and you know, that's something that you recognize that you just did, that's something you can click on. Or maybe you signed up for, I don't know, a new class or something, you know, a training class. You know, it might say, hey, verify your account. That kind of thing is okay if it's something you just generated or were expecting. But if you're getting, you know, emails that, oh, hey, you've got an attachment, please click this link to go to OneDrive, you know, that kind of thing, you've got to be very, very careful of. And if you don't click on those, you know, your risk factor goes from really, really large down to very, very minimal, because they want you, you know, the bad actors want you to click on those type of things. And you know, if you do see something that looks and feels questionable, your gut is probably right. Bring it to someone's attention before interacting with it at all. I mean, you know, if you open up an email and it looks weird, and there's an attachment to it, don't open the attachment. Bring it up to somebody. Whether, you know, if you're a client of ours, you can call our service desk, and they can kind of quickly do a sanity check on it visually. Or if they're not sure, they might involve me if I'm available to kind of take a look at it too, or we might actually have you send a copy of it to us, and we'll actually open it in a contained environment and see if there's anything malicious involved in it. But yeah, if you question things, that's the biggest thing, and not clicking on links is the other biggest thing. And I'll show you why here. So this is an example of just a regular, what we call regular phishing email. So a phishing email is something that looks like it's coming from a valid entity. In this case, it looks like it's coming from Microsoft, and it's saying, oh, hey, this just came in out of the blue. Hey, we noticed that your password's expired. And so we're going to, give you a handy link here that will allow you to just click on that and change your password. And in case one link wasn't good enough, I'll be even nicer and send you 2 links. So I've given you 2 opportunities to click on links that are embedded in this email. Well, the problem with this is this isn't coming from Microsoft. It looks like it is, but it's not. It's not coming from Microsoft. Your password isn't expired. And the idea is that I'm going to entice you to try to trick you into clicking on one of these 2 links. So what does that actually do? Well, on the next page here, we'll show you exactly what happens. So what happens is they send you that email. It looks like it's legit. You get it, and you click on one of those links, which is what I wanted you to do. Well, instead of going to the real site, you are now going to a fake site that looks just like the real site. And much like that single sign-on situation that I talked to you about earlier, you're going to put your username and your password in there, and it's going to send that information to the bad guy that set up this malicious site and sent that email. That's all this site is for, is to basically harvest your login information. Now, the bad actors will do one of 2 things. Sometimes you'll be caught in a loop where you keep entering your password. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Well, of course, it's not going to work because this isn't the real site. So it's never going to work. But the bad guys have also gotten smarter that they'll let you do this once on the bad site, and then they will redirect you to the right site over here. So when you log in, it's actually now logging into the real site because they pinned you back to the real site without you realizing it. And now it will work. And you'll think you just fat fingered your password or mistyped your password here, when in fact you probably didn't. It just is never going to work on this fake site. So in essence, then the bad guy's going to take those creds and log into whatever original site you were trying to get to in the first place. So in this case, if you get one of these emails, again, don't click on any of these embedded links. If you think this is legitimate, what I want you to do is open up a brand new web browser, and I want you to go to in this case, it would be going to Microsoft's or Outlook.com's site themselves, log in there, because then you've got the right site because you physically typed it. And if this is valid, as soon as you try to log in there, it's going to say, oh, hey, guess what? Your password's expired. I need you to change it. But more likely than not, it's probably not going to be the case. And this is just tactics to try to trick you into giving up your information. So the next part is spear phishing. So unlike that previous version, spear phishing is a little more targeted. It's still the same concept, but it's more targeted towards individuals or a group of individuals. In this case, a lot of times anybody in HR, payroll, things like that tend to be victims of this. And the biggest tactic is changing someone's direct deposit information. So what they do is they pretend to be an internal employee. They either got it off your website, or maybe they harvested it off of LinkedIn, one of the social medias. They got a list of all your users. So they're using one of those users to pretend to be and sending an email to HR saying, or payroll saying, hey, got a new bank account, want you to change my direct deposit information, and I need it done for this pay. If you don't have the proper policies and procedures in place to verify the identity and the authenticity of this request, you're going to send someone's payroll when payday comes to a drop account that was probably opened with fake stolen identity. But the minute that money hits that account, it's going to get emptied out and closed. And by the time you realize that you've just been duped, you're not only responsible for paying the real employee, because that wasn't them that made this request in the first place, you're also out the money that the bad guys stole from you. So it's one of these situations where any type of financial request like this needs to be verified in person or at a valid known phone number. So you should have a list of all your employees' phone numbers, whether it's a home number or cell phone number. It should be current. And because I know people work remotely now sometimes. So if in person isn't possible, you have to call them back at a known number, not some number that they include in the email here, because the bad guys do that too. So you need to verify that this is actually the person making that request before you send that. So. And then whaling. So whaling, much like it sounds, is you're going after the bigger fish. This is mainly it's either targeted at sea-level folks or pretending to be sea-level folks and targeting someone that may work underneath them. And it's mainly done as a fear thing, because a lot of people don't like questioning sea levels. In this case, I highly recommend you question sea levels, and I'll show you why here. So this is an example of someone pretending to be the CFO. Reaching out to somebody that either probably works underneath them or whatever, saying, "Hey, I'm out of the office. I need you to transfer, a wire transfer for me today." Or the other thing is gift cards. Go buy me some gift cards because I'm going on site to a client and I need to, I want to give some gift cards out as presents. Any type of financial request needs to be, again, much like the previous one, needs to be authenticated in person or verified at a known number. Any CEO that gets upset about someone verifying this is actually them when they request this via email, shame on them. That's my take on it. You were trying to protect the company, and if a C-level person gets upset for you bothering them by verifying this, then they shouldn't have done that request in the first. If it literally is legitimate, they shouldn't have done that request via email in the first place. It should be in writing. Or in person, or again at a known number. So that's one way to avoid this stuff. So this is another tactic that they're using. The bad guys are using. It's called consent phishing. So this is a little bit different tactic. This has leverages some applications that are done in Microsoft that will, you may be visiting a site or something, and then all of a sudden you'll get this application window pop up here saying, "Oh, well, permissions requested. Will you accept or deny these requests?" I will say again, if you get one of these pop-up blocks just out of the blue, and it's asking you for permission, please don't click on anything before getting somebody else involved. Again, if you're our client, call us, our support desk. We'll be happy to take a quick look at it. But if you're not, bring it up to your IT or somebody internally that can verify if this is legitimate or not. If you just blindly hit accept here, this is malicious, by the way. I mean, you can kind of see it says risky app, and it's also unverified. But that's easy to look over if you're not familiar with what these technically look like. But if you blindly hit accept here, what you're basically doing is giving whoever created this malicious app, you're giving them full blown access to your entire Microsoft backend, entirely, everything, your email, your calendars, your SharePoint, your Teams, your OneDrive, every single thing that's in the Microsoft ecosystem, this thing can access. And it doesn't matter if you have multi-factor or not. And if you don't know what that is, we'll talk about that, but this bypasses multi-factor too. So you got to be very, very, very careful just blindly accepting one of these application permissions. There are valid reasons for it. However, again, it's a quick phone call to us. If it's a matter of you're not sure or not, we can quickly verify whether it's legit or not and go from there. So just be careful of that. That leads us to quishing. So quishing is using QR codes. These little buggers are pretty handy, but they're also pretty nasty because if you blindly blindly scan these things, more likely than not, they're shortened website addresses or URLs, and you can't really see where you're going until you get there. So if you're just scanning this thing, it's going to send you to whatever the link that is behind that QR code. It's going to send you to that link. It could be a download. It could be a website. It could be, you're not sure until after you already scan it. And once you scan it, it's too late because it could already have downloaded something. You may not even realize it. So, if you're getting these blindly in emails and stuff, you got to be careful. In targeted attacks, it's super easy to use these. You can drop these on restaurant tables because people, with COVID, they used to do Well, a lot of places still do touchless menus. So there's good things for these. And again, just like everything else, there's good and there's bad. So these can be leveraged for malicious uses as well too. So just be cautious of what you're scanning, what you're not scanning, and know, what's happening there as best as possible. That leads us to AI. So AI, again, we're going to cover the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good, AI is here. It's probably not going anywhere. It's been here for a while. It's just becoming more widespread use and publicly available with all your chat GPTs and OpenAI and Bings and all that kind of stuff that are out there, depending on what your flavor is. So the good is obviously, AI can help you increase your productivity. It also allows machine-driven automation. It can help you from everything from creating a letter to hey, I'm writing this document or whatever that I need to do, and I've got a brain block and I can't think of the words to come up with. AI might help you with that. So that's kind of the good part of it. You can use and leverage AI for a lot of automation that doesn't necessitate a physical human to be doing, and then the AI could spit out the results, and you could obviously proofread what's coming out of, because it is using information that has been fed into it. So the bad, well, much like the good, the bad guys can also leverage AI to do bad things. Now, the public versions of these are kind of gated, and what I mean by gated is I can't go into the AI, any of the public AI engines, and ask it to create something that would be harmful, that it determines and is programmed that is harmful. So, just for instance, make me a bomb or something like that. It's not going to spit out the directions on how to make me a bomb or something like that. That's drastic, but I'm just trying to get the point across. However, while it will come back and say, oh, I can't do that because it's safety of humans or whatever, it's gated and protected. It's supposed to have boundaries in place to avoid that type of thing. However, if you go in and you specifically start crafting questions around that, you can actually get it to give you information that is programmed. Now I'm not going to tell you how to do it physically, but you can get around those boundaries by carefully crafting questions or asking it leading questions, and then building off of those leading questions. Oh, okay, well, tell me this. Oh, well, now tell me this. Oh, well, you told me this, now tell me that. And eventually you can get to the answer that you're actually looking for. Or even if the other part of this is, let's say you've got someone that doesn't know how to program. You can go in and ask AI to program you something. Write me a script that will create I don't know, a cookbook or something, a recipe book written in Python. It'll actually go through and create something where, it might give you, you're going from index cards if you're old school, to online, an online database of recipes and things like that. It will actually create that for you. And so the bad guys can say, well, create me a back door that isn't detectable now. Well, it's going to spit back saying, oh, well, I can't do that because, we consider that a security risk. Again, craft your questions correctly, you're going to get that thing to actually spit out something that isn't detectable. And you're basically manipulating the AI because it's not thinking, it's just programmed to put certain things in boundaries. So you're basically social engineering the AI is exactly what you're doing. On the flip side, there's also some dark web versions of AI too, which are completely not bounded. So you can ask that thing anything you want. Now they are not publicly available. You have to know how to get to them. But there's two versions right now that are on the dark web that actually are completely unchained, unhandcuffed. You can ask it anything you want, and it will spit out the information with no boundaries, no gates, no any guards, no nothing. So that's the bad part about it. It actually enables people that really don't know what they're doing, and creates a whole new potential attack vector of new attackers that really have no skill sets whatsoever, and that's dangerous. That makes it very dangerous. So as people that try to protect it's a constant cat and mouse game. We're trying to figure out the best way to allow the good stuff to be leveraged, but keep the bad stuff out. So, this is something new that we're dealing with. So, but I expect updates on this as the technology and things come to light. And then the ugly. If you are using AI, the one thing you want to keep in mind is you could potentially accidentally release sensitive information, especially if you're using a public AI engine. So there's two different versions. There's a public AI, which is open to anybody and everybody. And what you need to know about that public version is that anything you put into that, anything can be regurgitated to anybody else at any time. That means if you're physically uploading a letter saying, hey, proofread this letter for me and make suggestions on content or English language, whatever, punctuation, if that letter has any type of confidential information, if somebody asks the right way, that letter in its entirety will be spit back out to somebody else because it's in the public version. So you have to be very, very careful that anything you're putting into there is redacted of any type of confidential or private information that you don't want to be out on the internet, because AI is really fed by everything that's out on the internet and everything that's fed into it. That's what basically that's its brains. So you got to be sure that whatever you're putting into it isn't confidential. It doesn't have account numbers or anything like that. That could be potentially leveraged against you inadvertently by you accidentally leaking that information. Now, there are private versions of AI that, in theory, they're paid versions. They claim that your data isn't going to be utilized for any training. However, I'm skeptical of that, and I'm not trying to be a tinfoil hat person, but I'm very skeptical of that because the whole content of AI is driven by the data that's fed into it. So you're telling me I can get all this data, but you're not going to utilize the data that, that's my data. You're saying you're not going to share with everybody else. Well, then how are you giving me, all the data that you're already, it's a weird concept. And I get what they're trying to do, and maybe it is truthful. I'm just a little skeptical of it. All I'm saying is be very, very careful what you're putting in AI, because there is the capability of somebody, getting that information back out if you're not careful. So some of the anti-phishing tips that we suggest, obviously, the biggest thing, again, never click on any embedded links unless it's something that you've just generated and we're expecting. Doing that, you will protect yourself at such a high level that it's very unlikely you would fall for any type of attacks. Also, again, verify any type of financial request via email, whether it's direct deposits, automatic transfers, wire transfers. Always verify verbally with the person making the request, supposedly making the request. I think I saw somebody in chat say it just happened last week. I think I saw it go across my screen. Again, yeah, you got to verify. And any CEO that is going to get upset with you by verify. I mean, look, you're protecting the company. They should be thankful. And I'm not saying they would get upset, but you got to get past that fear factor that, oh, my CEO is going to get upset with me if I question. No, your CEO is probably going to thank you profusely if it is in fact fake. So the other thing too is another thing. If you're not utilizing external banners, and that's in the upper right-hand corner here. Basically, what this does is, let's say you are getting emails for someone that's pretending to be from the outside, whether it's HR or some employee going to HR, or even your CEO emailing you in. If you have external banners placed, what happens is any email that's coming from outside of your organization is going to have this big yellow banner on it, and basically say, hey, this is coming from the outside. You want to be a little cautious about opening this. And the reason why these are important is because, let's say you have a bad actor trying to pretend to be an internal employee using a spoofed email address or something like that. If that email comes into HR and it has one of these banners on it, that should be a huge red flag. But wait a minute, this is an employee. Why does it have this banner on it? It wouldn't. If it's the real employee and they're using their real email address, it would not have this banner because it would be routed internally within your organization. And same thing with a C-level person. If you have a CFO or a CEO that's asking you to go buy gift cards and it has this external banner on it, they're either one, using their personal email, or two, this is a fake email, and this is a big red sign that it's a fake email. So this is very, very helpful in visually telling, at least to be a little cautious. And again, if something seems off, report it. That's the best advice I can do. Your gut is probably 9 times out of 10 right. And even if you are an overcautious person, that's fine too. It's just one of those things. It's always better safe than sorry. And do that before you're interacting with anything. So USB and mobile devices, we'll go through this real quick here. If you ever see a USB flash drive, that's a little units that we used to carry around. They're not very prominent anymore, but sometimes people still use them. If you find one of them laying around and you don't know who it belongs to, don't plug that into your machine. Hold on to it, and if we're your client of us, give it to one of our engineers to take a look at. And we'll try to figure out, is it valid, or is it who the owner is, and if it is malicious, we'll give it back to you clean, obviously. So that's really what we're trying to protect, because you could plug that in and it can automatically run something without you even realizing it, just by plugging it into your machine. So you also want to keep your virus and software updated, your virus definitions and software updates. Maybe you do use these to transfer files back and forth. Sometimes our architectural clients use flash drives because the drawings are too big to send via email sometimes, so they bring them in on flash drives. So that's one thing. Also, if you ever get any type of electronic device blindly send to you, oh, hey, congratulations, you won this prize, and it's a brand new iPad, or an Apple Watch, or whatever. Those type of things. It might be an Alexa, could be a wireless access point. Just be cautious with those and putting those on your network, because the bad guys will definitely invest to send these things. So, I'm going to spend $500 on a watch. I'm going to send it to your facility. If I want to try to breach your facility, I'll spend the 500, because I know that I'm going to get that money back and then some if you hook that up to your network. So they have malicious software on them that basically allows the bad guy to kind of get on the inside by sending these devices out. This is pretty prominent with soldiers, unfortunately, for people that wanted to try to breach military bases, because they're manipulating, unfortunately, the soldiers. They're taken back by someone sending them a gift or something, and with the stress and stuff that a lot of times that goes along with those roles. This is a stress reliever to them. Is, oh, that's great, someone does care about things like that, and they just blindly connect it to the network internally, and now a malicious person that sent that to them is now on the inside of the military base network and can do all kinds of nefarious things. So just be cautious of that. If you are using any IoT devices, IoT stands for Internet of Things. That's things like cameras. It might be maybe you're using Roku's or something like that. Make sure that they are isolated off of your regular production network as possible. That way, if there's a lot of times those devices aren't kept up to date, and no one's managing those. So it's one of those things that you need to make sure that they're isolated, so any exploits or potential vulnerabilities on those don't affect your corporate side. Also, use your brick, the wall brick, for your cell phones. Everybody has a smartphone nowadays, and they're battery hogs. So what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to take the cord that comes with that and then plug it into your laptop or your desktop to charge. What you may not realize is it will charge that. However, the issue is that it also turns your phone into a USB device. So if there's something on the phone that was just waiting to be plugged into your computer, it could eventually send that over the wire and infect your corporate network. So if you use the part that plugs into the wall and just plug it into the electrical outlet, that avoids that potential thing. And it leads us on to the next thing. If you're out and about, make sure that you're cautious of public charging stations. As I just mentioned, if you're out and about and you utilize a public charging station, if it's a malicious version of a charging station, The minute you plug that in to charge your phone, it could actually steal all the data off your phone through that same cable. It could take your contacts, it could take your photos, it could take your email, it could take everything as you're charging it. It could be pulling that information off. Now they do make data cables, they're called data blockers, that actually only allow it to use the charging capability, and it keeps anything from going out of that. My recommendation is wait till you get to your car, or wait till you have access to an outlet if you can, and avoid public charging stations altogether. That's the safest bet. So vishing is someone pretending to be someone you're not. If you guys heard of the MGM incident that happened at the casino, Caesars and MGM, all that took was it was actually a young hacking group. It was actually a bunch of kids under the age of 18. The leaders of that hacking group are adults. However, they leverage underage non-adult people to do the dirty work. So if they do get caught, they pretty much get a slap on the wrist and don't get jail time because they're minors. So they're leveraging, they're kind of social engineering the people that are doing the hacks. But this was a bunch of kids that called up the internal team at MGM, claimed to be IT support, and they basically gave them access to their system by just pretending to be IT. So you got to be careful and verify any caller. So what we ask our clients specifically to avoid this, at least at this point in time, what we do is, there are times where we may call you out of the blue. We have remote monitoring stuff on your systems. So we do have insight into things that may be happening, and we may reach out without you reaching out to us. If that ever happens, instead of taking the call and letting us into the system directly, what I want you to do is just say, regardless whether you're busy or not, just say, you know what, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back in 5 minutes? Hang up the phone. First get the name of the person, hang up the phone, call back at our office number, not any number that they give you. Call back at our office number, and you'll get dropped into support. Just ask for that person, and if it's valid, you'll get transferred to that person, and then we can deal with the issue. So that kind of gives us that verification that, one, you are definitely getting somebody that works for us, and two, it's not somebody just pretending to be us to get access into your system. The other thing I do want to mention too is we will never, ever, ever ask you physically for your password. We have the ability to change your password at will. So we will never ask you for that password. We might ask you to enter it in for us, but we will never physically ask you for it. So if that is the case, obviously it could be somebody that's not us as well. So. And then you have smishing. So smishing is basically using texting. Sometimes it's just called text phishing. It's basically SMS messages on the phone where they text you and say, oh, this happens a lot. You might get them out of the blue. Hey, had a great time last night. And you see it come across and you're like, who the heck is this? An unknown number. And then you respond back, oh, you must have the wrong number. Well, guess what? They got you. Now you're interacting with the person. Oh, well, and then they could do all kinds of things and just try to trick you into doing things or whatever. Hey, got a minute, on an unknown number, you respond back, who is this? Again, if you're getting unknown numbers, ignore them or block them. Don't interact with them. It's just, one of those things. Sometimes they send you links to, and then they want you to visit sites. Just try to avoid them altogether. So shadow IT. So shadow IT is basically the use of all kinds of different devices. And I apologize. I thought I turned all the animations off on this. So anyway, shadow ITs is a combination of things. So what is it? So basically, shadow IT could be an end user installing software that isn't authorized. It could be maybe you want a piece of software that isn't on your machine normally, but you want to leverage it, but IT doesn't know about it. That's a form of shadow IT. Maybe you're using an online cloud storage that your security policies and security officers don't know about. So instead of using OneDrive, maybe you're using Dropbox or Google Drive or iCloud without authorization. That's another version of shadow IT. Maybe you want to work after hours on your machine. You install some remote access software on your machine that you can hit from your home and do work from home on the weekends or something. That's another form of shadow IT. or maybe you're deliberately trying to get around security protections. That's another form of it. Usually that last one isn't typical. It's usually the first three. But those are versions of shadow IT. And you've got to be aware that you should be getting authorization before making any changes or adding anything to your workstation, because it just opens up new potential attack vectors that are maybe not even known to your internal team, or even us for that matter, whether it's valid or not. Because the bad guys are leveraging a lot of these tools that are being installed by end users to do bad things, and we can't tell the difference of whether it's valid or not. So you got to be careful with that. Then it comes to passwords. So passwords, we recommend being complex, unique, and secure. At this point, we're recommending them to be at least 14 characters. And you can see on the screen here why that is. Passwords are being guessed very, very quickly now with current hardware. While it looks like 11 would be good by the middle of this year, that's going to be down into the days and months too. So this chart keeps flopping down the faster hardware comes out. And it's just a cat and mouse game how fast they can actually guess your password. So it's got to be at least one special character, 14 characters along, at least one special character. These are examples of that: one uppercase, one number. Obviously you're going to have to use some type of password manager or vault to remember all these passwords, and avoid saving passwords in browsers. Now, I don't have particular recommendations for what password managers to use. The one I will say to stay away from is LastPass. That one has been compromised numerous times, so I would highly recommend staying away from that. But there's other ones out there. Dashlane, I think, is one. 1Pass, I think, is our 1Password, whatever it is another. Bitwarden's another one. So there's various password managers out there. The only one I'll specifically say to stay away from would be LastPass at this point, at least until they get their act together a little better when it comes to securing people's passwords. Multi-factor is a second form of it. So it's an additional layer of security. It's not 100% foolproof, but at least the idea is that you put your username and password in, and then it's going to prompt you for a code that usually either comes to your phone or prompts you, is this you? So it definitely protects against a lot of attacks. You can see here automated attacks. It protects up in the high 90s. The bulk phishing attacks is about 96%. If it's a targeted attack, it drops down to the mid 70s. And I'll show you why here in a second. So one of the tactics that they use to try to bypass multi-factor, and this only works if your credentials have been compromised. So they already know your username and they already know your password. The only thing keeping them out of your account is your multi-factor at this point. So what they do is they prompt you, and this relies on push technology. So it might say, hey, are you trying to log in? And you're like, no. And then, hey, are you trying to log in? No. Are you trying to log in? 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 And finally you just say, oh my gosh, this is driving me crazy. Will you stop and hit less? Now you just let the bad guy in. If you ever start getting bombarded or multiple requests time and time and time again for your multi-factor, first, don't push yes. That's the first thing. Figure out what account it actually is that's prompting you for that multi-factor, and go quickly change your password, because your password has been compromised. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then this is how this is also how the targeted attacks could potentially be stolen. Basically, it's much like the password thing, except now it's kind of stealing the authentication token in the back end. So when you hit yes, obviously it's creating a token that says, okay, yes, it's been verified now on that site. And if somebody is able to get themselves in the middle of between you and the site that you're doing, they could potentially take that token that is authenticated, which is after the multi-factor, and use that to log into the site too. It's a tactical thing, and this is only really if you're being targeted. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this just because we're running tight on time here. So some security reminders. Obviously the biggest thing: don't click on those links. I'm telling you, it will save you so many times by just not clicking on those links if it's not something you're aware of. Verify the person is who they claim to be. Again, that's for financial requests. Using strong passwords and multi-factor. The other thing too is make sure you're storing those passwords securely. think before you act. That's another thing, and make sure your data is being backed up regularly, because it's one of those things where if it does happen, if you do get affected with one of those attacks, your backup is going to be your saving grace. And the other thing too is, if you ever come across a situation where you're in the middle of a ransomware attack, and you see that screen pop up saying, "Oh, hey, your files are being infected," and things like that. The knee-jerk reaction to that is to turn your machine off. And while, yes, I understand why you're doing that, you also have to be aware that if the authorities get involved, you could actually be held liable. Even though you're the victim, you can be held liable for destroying evidence, because some of that evidence is in memory, and by you powering off that machine, it actually loses some of the evidence. So what we recommend, two things. You can unplug the network cord. Don't unplug the power cord, but pull the network cord if you can, or if it's wireless, turn off the wireless network. And if it's not ransomware and you think something weird is going on, give us a call. We can actually isolate that machine with some of the utilities, that it will keep it completely isolated, where it only talks with our utilities in that machine. It'll isolate it completely from the network, so it won't propagate across your network. So with that, I know some of you are probably doing this for compliance issues. So the PCA will email out some certificates. The other thing I want to bring in mind too is that for anybody that is more IT oriented, or maybe C-level oriented, I have another series that we started this year called the Cyber Smart series. It is targeted more towards somebody at a higher IT level. It's really explaining some of the things out there. It's not really user awareness oriented, so normal users may not get a lot of value out of that. It's a different target, but it covers things. Our upcoming one is all the DR acronyms that are out there and things like that. It's not to say users can't join us, but it's more targeted for IT oriented folks. Again, no sales pitches, no nothing, just informational. And if you do have any security concerns, you can reach out to us, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that going forward and see what your issues are. So I think there are some questions here. It looks like I've seen a little bit of chatter here. Let me just quick. If you use LastPass, what would you recommend to remove from your account? I know there are. I think it's 1Pass. I think is a 1Password, or I'm not 100% sure. I actually use Bitwarden, so I don't know all of them. And I just moved to Bitwarden. I'll be honest with you, I was a very last holdout on that, because I really don't like my passwords being somewhere other than in my own possession. But anyways, that's just me. There are. We'll get your name, and I'll email you directly. I'll pull your attendee name, and I'll email you back what this other one is. There is a direct migration from LastPass into this other one. At least that's what I heard. I'll verify that and send that back to you, so you don't have to manually move everything. But that would be my recommendation. Presentation slides will be available. Yes, that is the case. Let's see here. We got another question here. Thoughts on unsubscribe reply buttons, links? Yes. Good question. That's a very good question. So a lot of times, if you get emails that have unsubscribes to them, what I would recommend, if it looks like it's a valid site, and you should be able to tell kind of whether it isn't or isn't. By hitting that unsubscribe button on a valid site, it will really unsubscribe you. On some of the more nefarious ones, you're actually just telling them, oh, well, guess what? We got a live one here, and now we're going to subscribe you to 10 other email addresses that you're going to have to unsubscribe from. So there's some validity to not hitting the unsubscribe. I personally just block them. Honestly, I just hit junk and use the junk mail filter. I don't hit unsubscribe unless it's something that I've physically signed up for and I want to do it that way. But yeah, that's a great question. I personally don't hit the unsubscribe buttons, because you're really validating that it's one of those things that it's just verifying there is a live person that's interacting with that. So yeah, there was Terry that said that just happened. That was the one I said about the CEO thing, I think, that happened. And I think that's it. I don't see any other questions here. If I did miss something, again, I'll reach out with that password vault question. and a potential answer for that directly once I figure out which one it is. I'm not real clear on the name of it. I apologize for that. But I appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you again at one of our other presentations. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.